The second market failure we're going to focus in on is a public good. So remember that a public good has two main characteristics and features. Number one, non-rivalry, which tells us that consumption does one by one does not reduce the utility of that good or service to others, meaning that we can use the same good all at the exact same time and not lose any utility from it. And number two, non-excludability. Once a good or service is provided, it is not possible to exclude others from enjoying it. So once it's out there, everyone can use it. We cannot exclude anyone from using this good or service. So you can use it, I can use it, the president can use it, a hobo can use it. This is what non-excludable means. And public goods is exactly where a lot of government policy does come into play. And there are really a lot of good examples of public goods that we can think about. And this is exactly where the government tends to step in and provide these goods, because typical firms and corporations really have no incentive to produce these type of goods. So things like public television and public radio, PBS, they give us great shows such as Arthur and Sesame Street. If we ever want to learn our numbers and letters, we have NPR, public radio, we have lighthouses, we have the street lights on the highways, we have national defense. These are all things that the government does provide to us, and they share the features of being non-rivalrous and non-excludable. So this does introduce a little bit of an interesting segue in terms of you and I as consumers and exactly what the socially optimum level of public goods is going to be. So here, let's go ahead and say that we as consumers do not have incentive to pay for these public goods at all. So here, let's start off by making this statement right here. Consumers do not have an incentive, to pay for public goods, So we want these goods, but we really have no incentive to pay for it because public goods, once again, are non-excludable and non-rival. So essentially, we as consumers, what do we become? We become free riders, something known as free riders. Become free riders. And what exactly is a free rider? It's someone who benefits from a good or service but doesn't have to pay for them. So an individual who benefits from a good or service, but does not have to pay for them. So things like PBS, NPR, lighthouses, national defense, those streetlights, we don't necessarily have to directly pay for them, but we get all the benefits generated from it. Because of this reason, we do notice that private businesses have no incentive to produce these particular goods. So here, because of this, private businesses have zero incentive to produce public goods, because they're never going to receive any revenues or profits from providing these goods because they are non-rivalrous and they are non-excludable. So Amazon, Target, Walmart, they won't be providing these particular public goods because we are free riders. And also another good example of being free riders, just being in the academic sense, suppose that you have some type of group project that you need to do. So what always happens in any type of group project, it's typically just one or two people doing all of the work, and the people that don't do any of the work at all are going to get the same grade as the people that do the vast majority of the work. And that's the idea of the free riders. So imagine this class with a group project. I'm pretty sure that everyone would exactly hate that, including myself. So this is exactly another example of that. So in order for us to find out the socially optimum level of public goods, we actually need to find out what the marginal benefit is. And the way to do this is going to be a little bit different compared to what we saw in chapter number 3, where we found out that we needed to add up the total market demand. So remember that in chapter number 3, we were taking a look at private goods. And this was exactly the vast majority of goods and services that you are going to buy on an everyday basis. And in order to figure out the total market demand for these private goods, what did we have to do? What type of summation? We needed to go ahead and do some type of horizontal summation. summation. So for every single price, we need to add up the quantity in order to get the total market demand. But when we take a look at public goods, we actually need to go ahead and go in the opposite direction with vertical summation. Vertical summation. And vertical summation, we need to use this particular technique in order to find the total market demand or the marginal benefits, is because remember that with these public goods, they are non-excludable and non-rival. So everyone can use it at the same exact time. So we need to account for that. So here with vertical summation, we need to add up every single price for every single quantity. So here, for every single quantity, add up the price. Add up the price. So with horizontal summation, remember, it's for every single price you add up the quantity, but with vertical summation, it's for every single quantity, add up the price. So let's go ahead and see this in application. Here we have two people. We have person A and person B, and we have their individual demand curves for this public good. We have the supply, which equals the marginal cost of the public goods, and we want to figure out what the socially optimal amount of public goods is going to be with person A and person B combined with one another. In order to find out the market demand for these public goods, we need to use horizontal summation because person A and person B, they're the only two people within this particular market. So at a quantity of 0, what is the price each of these people are willing to pay? Person A is willing to pay $40, person B is willing to pay $60, so using vertical summation at a quantity of 0, we add up the price. 40 plus 60, so therefore the price is equal to 100. So therefore, starting off at a quantity of 0, the market demand or the market price is going to be 100. That's vertical summation for you. And then you continue on for each of these quantities that we have. So here we'll go for a quantity of 20. At a quantity of 20, we notice that, hey, person A, they have a price equal to $20. Person B also has a price equal to $20. So therefore, the market price is going to equal to $40. That 20 plus 20. And then you continue on with every single quantity for every single person. And this red line right here is exactly going to be our market demand for these public goods. So use vertical summation for every single quantity, add up the price. Do not use horizontal summation for every price, add up the quantity. So that's exactly where we get the market demand for the private goods. That's where the demand curve would be shifted out further than this. So do be aware of that, be cognizant of that. And once we built up the market demand for these public goods, we're able to find out what the socially optimal amount for these goods are going to be. It's simply going to be the intersection of supply and the market demand. So exactly right here, the red and blue lines. We're going to be led to a market price of $40 and a market socially optimum point of 20 units of these particular goods. And that's simply it. That's going to be the socially optimal amount of goods and services for these public goods. And it's easy for us to say that, hey, supply and demand, exactly where they equal to one another, that is exactly where the marginal benefit is going to equal the marginal cost. So this is exactly some type of cost-benefit analysis. But in application, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for us because it's hard for us to say exactly how much marginal benefits there are going to be for these public goods. So for the marginal cost, it's very easy for us to say, hey, having more military, having more lighthouses, providing more public television and radio, we know exactly how much that's going to cost. But it's going to be a little bit more of a difficult task for us to say exactly how much marginal benefits does every single person get from that public good. How much does an additional nuclear bomb or an additional person on the ground for the military benefit person A and person B? And that's where the application becomes a little bit more fuzzy in this case. So in the economic sense, we can say, simply put, where marginal benefit equals marginal cost is going to yield the optimum outcome or the optimal provision of these public goods. But the specific numbers and application in the real world are a little bit more difficult than that. And that's exactly where we need to have all that data and see exactly what people believe about these public goods and so on. So this is the idea of public goods, our second market failure. We'll go ahead and take a look at our third and final market failure with the common property resources and see how that's very similar to these public goods and the idiosyncrasies that go along with that.